Welcome back, everybody, to the second edition of the Spread Option here on the CFB Nation podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Trowbridge. With me is my guy, Vince D'Addario. Vince, it is finally week one. Week 0 was cool. We got a little bit of a sample size, a little bit of an appetizer of college football, but today we have a lot to cover. There's a full slate of college football on this weekend. 5 straight days of college football. I have 4 games up on my TV right now, Vince. I'm ready to rock and roll.
I love it. See, I need to work on the man cave down here and get some screens going and things like that so that I can follow along like you do. I feel like you deserve the man card right now because you got all the screens up. But no, we got some fun stuff to talk about. I am starting a petition to get rid of week 0 and just call it week 1. I really don't understand why we call it week 0 because this isn't the NFL. After week 1, we don't say week blank. Like, that's not even a thing after week 1. It's week 0, week 1, and then we're just college football the rest of the way. I don't understand why it has to be week 0. I guess it's publicity or whatever, but whatever. Here we are. It is now officially week 1, and we got some great games to talk about, that's for sure.
Well, we'll get a petition going. I'll start passing it up the ladder. I'll see what I can do, and maybe we'll float it out on Twitter. We'll see what happens, or X or whatever it's called now.
Right.
Well, listen, folks, here's how we're going to get down today. Since this is the second episode, we didn't get to do this in the first one, but we're going to start off today's show going over a segment that we like to call hit or miss, and we're going to bring up some of the bets and the props that we talked about last week, and we're going to talk whether they hit or whether they miss. Now, look, bear with us here because last week was a little funky because we covered the week 0 games and some of the games that are currently going on right now.
Right.
So some of those we're not going to have an answer to. We can just talk about are things trending in the right direction. After that, we're going to get down to business like normal. We're going with the countdown where we're going 4 games. And each game we're talking about the big 3, spread, money line, and the over-under. We're going to give you guys 2 player props to keep an eye on, then 1 bet to completely keep off of your bet slip. It's because it's up in the air right now. It's week 1 and sample sizes are still, I don't even want to call it limited. They're just not there because we have not seen these teams yet this year. Then we are going to get into our locks of the week and then our drops of the week. Bets that we are very confident that they're going to hit and ones that you should completely keep away from your betting slip because it's one that's going to doom it, especially if you throw it and roll it into a parlay. And then, of course, we are going to end today's show with our dog of the week. So, Vince, a lot on the docket today. I think the best place to start, game 1 of last week of week 0, Iowa State, Kansas State, Farmageddon. And we talked about some of the bets that were going to be going on with those. And when we broke down the big 3, we were confident in some of them. Look, Iowa State last season, they were 8-6 against the spread. And, you know, I know you're high on Kansas State this year. I'm high on Kansas State this year. Our guy Brian Driscoll over at the Irish Breakdown podcast is really high on Kansas State. Kind of let us down a little bit, though, man. Kind of let us down.
Did. Yeah, they certainly did. It was a rough game, and to be honest, we probably should have expected a little bit of that because there was weather involved. You know, it was raining a lot of the game. It was overseas. It was week 1. You know, it was all of those different things, and it was sloppy. Like, the first half was sloppy in more ways than one. It was sloppy football. It was sloppy weather, sloppy turf, you know, the whole kind of deal there. Did not lead to a lot of the things going the way that we wanted them to go. But at the same time, Iowa State earned that victory, and they did what they needed to do to be 1-0 after week 1. So, you know, hats off to them. But that's the best part about when you're betting, because if you're not just betting, you know, the money line or the spread, things like that, player props can go your way whether your team wins or loses. So we did have some success with the player props, not so much with the spread.
No. Like I said, Iowa State was 8-6 against the spread in 2024, and they're starting off this season 1-0. They're such a weird team to evaluate, man. I mean, if you remember last year, a lot of their wins were so ugly. You know, it's like they didn't have like electric plays. It was methodical drives. Rocco Becht was just kind of making plays out of nowhere, and before you knew it, Iowa State was ending the season 11-2 and found themselves in the Big 12 championship game. But what did hit for us last week, we talked about Avery Johnson taking his over in passing yards. The line was set at 198.5 passing yards. He ended the day passing for 273 yards, which ended up obviously working out in our favor. And then we also talked about Rocco Becht taking his over in rushing yards. Now, this one was a nail-biter because unfortunately Unfortunately for us college football fans, which we did put this caveat in the last show, rushing yards, when you get sacked in college, it goes against your rushing yard total.
Yep.
And so it came down to a nail biter at the end, especially considering Rocco Becht was taking knees at the end of the game. We took his over at 16.5, and he ended the game with 18 rushing yards. So, Vince, chalk that up for a win, baby.
Come on, we knew it all along. Are you kidding me? When you texted me after the first quarter and you were like, both of these guys have negative yards. I believe Avery Johnson had like negative passing yards, and Rocco Becht had been sacked a couple times. And so it was not looking good for either one of those things.
No, it was looking pretty rough. I mean, we had at one point, I think when I texted you, Rocco Becht had -9 rushing yards and Avery Johnson had -3 passing yards.
Correct.
And so it started out as bleak as possible, but what do you know? They ended up pulling it out in the end. That's the better's life, man.
That's right.
Better's life. The next game that we talked about, we did not have as much luck in. Game 2 that we covered last week was Fresno State versus Kansas. And now look, high-powered offense at Kansas. Fresno State had a pretty good offense, honestly, heading into the game. Kurt Warner's son was their starting quarterback. And I was expecting Kansas's defense to be decent, but I wasn't expecting it to look like what it did. Their front four absolutely ate up Fresno State's offensive line. We talked about hitting the over. And I even talked about in one of the prop bets, maybe even looking at taking the alternate over at 52.5. And I would have been about 14 points shy because total points scored in that game was 38. Kansas had their way in that one, Vince.
Yeah, that was, Sean Stiers was pretty happy with the way the old Jayhawks looked in that game. And we did have a prop bet, a player bet with Jalen Daniels going over 33.5 rushing yards. And he did do that with 47. So, that one, look, Jalen Daniels, I like his rushing props usually probably every game. But he definitely did what he needed to do to get us that one. So yeah, the total points, the over under was not good to us, but the Jalen Daniels was very good to us.
So basically what I'm hearing, Vince, is if you put together a parlay of Avery Johnson's over in passing yards and Rocco Becht's over in rushing yards and Jalen Daniels over in rushing yards, you had yourself a nice little week 0.
That would be a winner, chicken dinner.
It would be. Now, listen, some of the other games, like I said, that we covered last week, we covered the Boise State and USF game. That one's currently going on. We also talked about East Carolina and NC State. That game is also currently going on. In case anybody doesn't have it up on their TVs right now, USF is having their way with Boise State. Byron Brown just rushed in a 15-yard touchdown to extend the lead 23-7 in favor of South Florida. Boise State struggling. But when we talked about that game last week, Vince, we talked about one to keep away from, since player props weren't out yet at the time, that we weren't going to touch the money line. Boise State, they were on the road. They no longer had Ashton Genty. Love some of the experience that they brought back, but he was the majority of their offense last season. And right now, getting ready to head into the fourth quarter, Boise State has a whopping 7 points on offense. And so our keep away from last week is looking pretty strong. We also talked about keeping an eye on Byron Brown's rushing yards for the game. Right now, he is sitting at 40 rushing yards. He has 13 carries, 40 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. So that might be one to keep an eye on as the season goes on. And then, Vince, the other game that we talked about, East Carolina, NC State, that one is still ongoing too. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see that, but NC State is kind of having their way and exercising some of those demons in the bowl game they lost last year. It's 17-0 NC State, and they have the ball right now.
Yeah, and they're driving, and they're about to hit midfield, so we'll see what happens. Well, it's 4th and 9, so they'll probably be punting at this moment. But, yeah, they're in control, 3 in the first quarter, 14 in the second. So they're kind of pouring it on a little bit onto East Carolina. So, yeah, that one's definitely going NC State's way. And, the fun part about all of this is a lot of these games are all going on right now, and so we might touch on them a little bit next week when we come back, from our 2 weeks ago, but that's just the nature of week 0 and kind of how it goes. And when we're running the show and everything, and Jacksonville State, UCF, we talked about that one a little bit, and they're delayed. So they're not even playing right now. So, those are the kind of things that you run into, when you've got games almost every day of the week. Not that we're complaining, by the way, because that just means more football. But yeah, right now, Jackson State, UCF delayed, I believe, in the second quarter. I assume due to weather, but they're delayed. So yeah, a lot of games going on though right now, which is crazy. For a Thursday, lots of games going on.
You know what, Vince? I think you might have convinced me. I think I might sign this petition of yours and just make everything week 1 because this is just getting too crazy to follow.
Just saying.
Too crazy to follow. You should be the dean of students at a high school or something. I'm on board with you, man. I'm rolling with you.
I'll tell you what, I'm Cash. We had a pep rally this morning, and like I'm just a shocker. Like I'm like the MC guy, you know, trying to get everybody hyped up and riled up. Like I'm ready for a nap, man. But I can't take a nap because there's all this good college football on. It's great.
Oh, the double-edged sword of college football season.
I'm telling you.
Well, listen, some of the other things that we talked about last week, again, we're going to have to wait till later this evening to see how it pans out. My lock of the week was Nebraska at 6.5, taking their spread at 6.5. And look, they're on the road against Cincinnati. I don't think that they're going to be that good of a ball club this year. I think that they're going to be towards the bottom of the Big 12 conference. I think Nebraska's due for a little bit of a bounce back year. That game doesn't kick off until 9, so that is one that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on. Vince.
My lock of the week, lost by half a point, Trevor. Half a point. Now, full disclosure, I thought Stanford was going to win the game, okay? And instead of them winning the game, they lost on a last-second field goal on, you know what, one of the best stories so far coming out of college football with the kicker coming from Japan and going to junior college and then kicking the game winner and all of that. So, you know, Hawaii wins by 3. The spread was plus 2.5 for Stanford. That's what we call, ladies and gentlemen, a bad beat. Okay. It was the tie game. You know, I was sitting as a winner, and then all of a sudden this kid comes in, kicks a field goal. I lose by half a point. So that's a bad beat, ladies and gentlemen. But, you know, you got to wear it. And I got to wear that bad beat.
Yeah, Stanford may be in some trouble this year.
They are not a good football team. They're actually, I think, maybe worse than I thought they were going to be. I'm sorry. I didn't think Hawaii was going to be able to take down a Power 4 team, and we use that term loosely when describing Stanford, but it's still a Power 4 team. They hadn't beaten a Power 4 team in forever, right? And I don't think they'd ever beaten Stanford. I think they were 0-4 against Stanford all time, and Stanford lays an egg. So you can do all the research that you want. You can look at all the numbers. You can do all the everything. It's still college football, and they still got to play the game, Trev. And I lost by half a point.
Well, unfortunately for Vince, that means that my drop of the week was pretty sound. And I said I'm not touching any of the big 3 of the Stanford-Hawaii game, whether it's spread, over, under, or the money line, because that game just scared me. Real quick, just to wrap this up, your drop of the week, that game is still going on, Duke versus Elon. You have Elon covering the spread at 33.5. Or, well, you said you're not touching that for your drop of the week, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I believe that was my drop of the week. I can't remember exactly why I said that was a drop of the week, because 33.5, well, it was 33.5 is just a huge number. And I was not going to take Duke plus the 33.5, which is basically what I was referring to there. And right now it's 3-0 in the second quarter. So 33.5 still looks like a pretty big hill to climb there for the Dukies.
Yep, I'm with you. And then both of our dogs of the week, those games are still going on. Jacksonville State, that game is currently delayed. And then Miami of Ohio doesn't kick off against Wisconsin until tonight at 9 p.m. So my eyes are going to be glued to the TV to make sure that we keep up whatever little winning streak that I have right now, making sure that's still alive.
Hey, I'm telling you right now, Jacksonville State, it's obviously delayed, like we said. I'm trying to look for the time on the clock, and I'm having trouble. It's in the second quarter. It's 0-0. So I'm liking my plus 17.5 right now, by the way, for my dog of the week. So just throwing that out there. We have been right on a few of these. So,
we have.
You know, keep that in mind, folks, as we roll through this week's games.
Well, Vince, let's dive into part 2, and let's start talking about this week's games. Part 2 of the spread option here on the CFB Nation podcast, which, by the way, guys, make sure that you guys are subscribed to this YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. Make sure that you guys like this video at some point throughout, and make sure you guys continue to share it. We had a lot of views. We had a lot of awesome viewership on our first ever show. We want to keep growing this channel. We want to keep growing this show. It's something fun that Vince and I both enjoy doing, and we have a lot of fun talking about this. So, look, man, Vince and I get very limited shows together during the week. And
it's true.
With how many night games Notre Dame is going to have this year, the only time I'm going to be able to sit and hang out with Vince is at some point at 1 a.m. after a Notre Dame night game show. So We're going to have to make sure that we have a lot of fun on this 8 p.m. show. 8 p.m. being the early window.
Yeah, this is the
Trevor
early
Vince.
window. That's right. Yes. 100%. That's hilarious and so true. Yes.
Well, listen, folks, let's jump into the countdown. Again, we're going to break down 4 games. And the first game that we're going to talk about, and how can you not talk about it, Vince? It's number 1 Texas on the road against number 3 Ohio State. This is going to draw a lot of eyes. A lot of eyes. And look, this kicks off at noon to the dismay of many fans in Columbus. But it kicks off at noon on Fox. And where we're going to start, Vince, we're talking big 3. Spread is in favor of Ohio State, but it's close, man.
Yeah.
1.5 spread favorite in Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, the old bettors adage is that you get 3 points for being the home team, you know, like automatically. And so if you take away the 3 points, I mean, it's essentially a pick'em game at this point. Obviously Vegas is slightly favoring Ohio State here with a 1.5 point spread, thinking that they're going to take this game by 1.5. And so, yeah, you're going to have a lot of money on both sides of this one. I mean, it's 1 versus 3. It's at Ohio State. This is going to be an interesting one for sure. And it's tough. I mean, unless you're a diehard fan, putting money on this game is a crapshoot because it's essentially a 50-50 toss-up.
This is what makes this game so interesting. Right now, the odds for Ohio State to take money line, it's -110. Here's some nuggets for you guys. Texas has not lost in week 1 since 2018. It's pretty impressive. Ohio State said, I'll see your 2018, and I'll raise you about 19 years because Ohio State has not lost in week 1 since 1999. However, this is their first time playing the number 1 team in the country in the modern era, and they've only ever played one ranked opponent since 2004 to begin their season. That opponent, Vince, was Notre Dame when they were ranked 5th in the country in 2022. So there's a lot of different ways this game could go. When we get into the over-under conversation, right now it's set at 47.5. The total went under in 9 of the last 12 games for Texas, but the over hit in 4 of the last 6 games for Ohio State. I see a lot of people in the chat right now talking about how they're just not touching the game. It's just,
I get it.
As far as the big 3 is concerned, man, those lines are just a little too close to comfort for me.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I mean, you know, we're going to put out our predictions just from a win-loss standpoint here. I think they come out tomorrow. Don't necessarily want to spoil those, but I will say of these 3, if you're saying, Vince, you got to pick one to bet on, I'm taking the over-under at 47.5, and I'm probably going to take the under on this one. I think the defenses are going to have the advantage in this game, having it being week 1, having both quarterbacks being new to being the full-time starter for both of their teams. I feel like they're going to ease into it a little bit, lean on the run game, you know, those types of deals. So I'm taking the under on the points. I don't think it's going to be a track meet. I would have a different opinion if this game was later on in the season. Yeah. You know, after these quarterbacks get a few starts under their belt. Yes, I realize Arch Manning had 4 starts last year or whatever it was. But, you know, it's different kind of pressure, right? Different kind of pressure when, you're essentially the backup and you're coming in for spot starts and things like that. So this is his first game on the road, big environment. I feel like I've heard that someplace before with a team that we cover. But at the same time, I'm taking the under if you're forcing me to make a decision on one of the big 3.
I'm with you. Look, the thing that's working in Texas's favor, yes, obviously it's in Columbus. It's going to be a raucous crowd. Both their offensive and defensive coordinators come back, and they're going into their 5th seasons respectively. And Ohio State, on the flip side of that coin, man, yes, Brian Hartline has been a part of that program. I like Brian Hartline a lot. The last time he was offensive coordinator, though, Ryan Day, it was hard for him to kind of loosen the reins a little bit, and he ended up taking over play calling duties. Will Ryan Day be able to trust Brian Hartline enough to let him take control of the offense? I'm not overly concerned about the Buckeyes' offense. It's their defense. Their defensive coordinator was Matt Patricia. I thought that was one of the more interesting hires. And Brian said it in the show earlier today at Irish Breakdown. This is going to go one of 2 ways. Ryan Day's either going to look like a genius. There's going to be a lot of fans up in Columbus scratching their heads at that decision at the end of the year. We're talking about somebody that hasn't coached at the college level since 2004, Vince. And unfortunately, he was not a defensive coordinator or a position coach. He was a graduate assistant at Syracuse in 2004 before he made the move to the NFL. And so questions there, that coaching favor, kind of falls under Texas, but I'm with you. I'm staying away from the big three. Player props,
Yes.
Vince. Now, something that Ohio State hasn't had in a couple of seasons since Cade Stover left to go to the NFL is an impact tight end. And I'm really interested to see what Max Clare is going to be able to do for them as we start getting into player props here.
Yeah, absolutely. And if, a stat to go along with what he's done so far, excuse me, he hit in 6 of 12 games at Purdue, and they were terrible. Like, he was a very lone bright spot on that Purdue Boilermaker team. And he has obviously since hit the transfer portal and has some different players around him now where he might be able to shine a little bit more. So the over-under for receiving yards set at 40.5, which is minus 114 odds. Trevor, are you feeling the over here?
I am feeling the over. Look, this has kind of been an aspect of Ohio State's offense that we haven't seen in quite some time. We know Jeremiah Smith is going to get his. Yeah, I'm not overly concerned about Julian Saint. I know it's his first start. He's probably going to hit his over in passing touchdowns. I still think it was set at over under 1.5. But look, man, the tight end in that offense is something that they just haven't had in a couple of seasons. I really like Max Clare coming over. He's a talented kid. And unfortunately, he played for Purdue, which I think is partially what made him fly under the radar.
Sure.
All due respect to G. Scott, I like Max Clare in that offense.
Love it.
The other player prop that we're going to talk about here, Carnell Tate. Now, he is stepping into the role that Emeka Egbuka left voided when he got drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But Carnell Tate's a talented kid. Man, Notre Dame fans are extremely familiar with Carnell Tate. But look, right now his over-under is set at 48.5 receiving yards. I am hammering that over. Absolutely hammering that over. He had 87 receiving yards last year against Texas in the semifinals, and that was the defense with Andrew Makuba and Jahdae Barron. If you were to take his over-under at 48.5, it would have hit in 7 of 16 games in 2024. I like Carnell Tate in this one. Texas, it's not going to be much of a mystery who they're circling on their scouting report this week. It's number 4 lined up in the boundary. Jeremiah Smith's the best returning player in college football. I think Carnell Tate's going to eat on Saturday.
He's definitely going to be seeing a lot of single coverage. That's for sure. And it's going to be a bit of a security blanket, I think, there for Mr. Sayin behind center. So I think that's a good pick. One to keep away from, Trev. Ohio State rushing props. I think this one is interesting because, look, there's just too many question marks in week 1 right now. And what is the rotation for the running backs going to be? They have a new offensive coordinator, just so many different things. It's just not smart to go at this because you just don't know. You don't have enough evidence either way, to take the over, take the under, whatever, because CJ Donaldson is set at 40.5 and James Peoples is set at 52.5. This is not the same 1-2 punch that they had last year, Trev. And so this is not one that I would touch. I think this is one that we keep away from.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Look, FanDuel kind of views it the same. Right now, the over-under for James Peoples is 51.5. The over-under for CJ Donaldson is 43.5. I would even go as far to say is staying away from rushing props for this entire game. You got question marks on both offensive lines. I could see it going either way, but even for Texas, Quintravian Wisner is over-under is set at 53.5. They get CJ Baxter back from injury, and Arch Manning can also use his legs, and his over-under is set at 27.5. I just don't feel comfortable betting on any sort of rushing props in this game because, Vince, to your point, it could just go any which way. Makes me super nervous. I'm not adding it to my bet slip, not on Saturday.
Yep,
definitely
completely agree. Completely agree. Let's jump into game 2, Trev.
Game 2. The Alabama Crimson Tide are traveling down to play at Doak Campbell Stadium, home of the Florida State Seminoles. When we start talking about big 3 here, the spread, Alabama's big favorite, 2 touchdown favorites on the road. It's kind of crazy. I understand why. Florida State was garbage last season. They finished the year 2-10, but being 2 touchdown dogs at home to open the season, it's a tough look. It's definitely a tough look. Well, look, Alabama last season against the spread, they were 7-6. Florida State was 2-8-2 against the spread in 2024. This is just a team that, Vince, I just couldn't even tell you which direction Florida State's going to be this year.
Florida State, I mean, look, 2 years ago, they, had beef that they weren't playing for a national championship. And then last year was an absolute dumpster fire. So what are they going to do? How are they going to bounce back this year? It's a massive question. They raided the portal, and basically turned over the roster again. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Florida State, to be perfectly honest with you. Maybe they turn it around, maybe they don't. This is a tough first game for the Seminoles, plain and simple. I don't think 13.5 is enough. And I don't think anybody's talking about this game if it's the exact same roster that Florida State has, but a different name attached to it. Because they just have the historical name. They have the brand. So people are talking about Alabama going to Florida State. When Alabama and Florida State agreed to this game, it made a lot of sense, obviously. I just hope from a betting standpoint that Alabama is not overlooking Florida State, because I think they're a bad football team. I don't know if they're going to be as bad as they were last year. That would be very difficult. But Alabama is in a different stratosphere than Florida State is right now. So, again, if you're asking me to take one of the big three, I'm probably going to be hitting the spread and taking Alabama minus the 13.5.
Yeah, I was concerned about Alabama potentially overlooking Florida State until, for whatever reason, Mike Norvell and Thomas Castellanos decided to pop off against Alabama. And for reasons that I just can't really fathom, they decided to take some shots at the Crimson Tide this offseason, and they opened the season against them. So I guess that is what it is. You got Mike Norvell talking about how he's happy he didn't take the job. You got Thomas Castellanos talking about how people need to know who he is because he's the reason why Boston College won their games last year. And
okay,
yeah, it's a bold statement for somebody who got benched for Grayson James, but that's neither here nor there. This is a betting show. And if we are going to stay consistent, I'm willing to bet that Thomas Castellanos is going to have a rough game on Saturday.
Yeah.
Now, money line for Alabama, I think you and I can both agree, not touching it. It's just not worth the payout. Alabama, nope. Their odds for the money line, it's minus 650. Just not worth it.
Yeah. You're basically paying them to play, and it's not. It's not. You can, if you want to play, just so you have the little win, next to your bet that goes in like your historic bets on the app or whatever. Okay, if you want to feel good about yourself, great. But you place a bet. I don't know. I don't even know what the actual numbers are, but it's basically you bet $10, you're going to win like 10.5, which means you're going to win like 50 cents. It's just
pretty
much
just
not worth your time. It's not even worth your time throwing that into a parlay because it doesn't increase your odds.
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you're hitting a slump, and we've all been there, and like a basketball player, you just need to see one go through.
Right.
I guess you can hammer Alabama money line, but that's not one that I'm touching. Another one that I'm also not comfortable with touching in this game because of the Florida State side. The over-under right now is set at 50.5.
Yep.
It's minus 105. The under hit in 6 of the last 7 games for Alabama, and the under hit shockingly in 9 of the 12 games for Florida State last year. I know the trend tells us that maybe it'd be logical to take the under here, but look, here's the thing. Alabama, they get Ryan Grubbs back. That's Kalen DeBoer's offensive coordinator when he was at Washington. Ty Simpson's taken over at quarterback. He's a much better facilitator of the football than what Jalen Milroe was. Not the same athlete. When you have a receiving core that's made up of Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and Isaiah Horton, the Miami transfer, I like their odds of putting up points. I just don't know if Florida State's going to be able to match them to any sort of degree on Saturday. I'm also probably going to stay away from the over-under in that game as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's hit a couple player props, Trev.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. First one that I like in this game, Richard Young, the running back who's going to be starting for Alabama. His over-under right now is set at 59.5, minus 114 odds. Jam Miller was supposed to be their starting running back, but he's hurt. He's out for this game. I think Alabama's going to control the line of scrimmage. And to boot, Florida State last year ranked 107th in rush defense in 2024. They gave up 184.6 rushing yards per game. Ty Simpson, he's an athletic kid. He's no Jalen Milroe with the football in his hands. I think you're going to get back to seeing like old school Alabama run game, like what you saw in 2020, what you saw in 2015 when Jake Coker was their quarterback, what you saw in 2012 when A.J. McCarron was their running back. Now, do I think that Richard Young is Derrick Henry or Eddie Lacy or T.J. Yeldon or Najee Harris? No, I don't, but I am pretty confident in saying that he's going to hit the over. Yeah. He's going to get at least 60 rushing yards on Saturday.
59.5 yards is not very much for the lead back for Alabama against Florida State, period. End of discussion. You could put whatever name that you wanted there, and I would take the over. That's just where it's at. So, yeah, I'm with you on that one for sure. What's the second one you got?
Second one is Jeremy Bernard's over in receptions. Right now, it's set at 3.5 receptions at minus 106 odds. The over would have hit in 9 of the 13 games last season for Jeremy Bernard. There's going to be a lot of attention going in the direction of Ryan Williams. Again, same thing like what we talked about with Ohio State. It's not going to be a mystery who Florida State's going to be circling on the scouting report on offense for Alabama's receiving corps. I think Jeremy Bernard has a big game.
We already talked about what we're going to stay away from. That's the money line. So it's time to talk about game 3, which I know a lot of people in the chat that are normally here with us are very much keeping their eyes on, and that's number 9 LSU at number 4 Clemson.
Let's dive into the big 3, Vince. Spread right now, Clemson is 3.5-point favorites at home. You usually get a 3-point bump around there for being the home team. So this means on a neutral field, the odd makers are, looking as if this is kind of a pick'em game. Yeah. And this is going to be an interesting one. Brian Kelly is looking to break his losing streak. He's lost 3 consecutive season openers, and it even dates back before he got down to Baton Rouge. LSU hasn't won a season opener since 2019 when Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were all there.
Correct.
Not great. And now they have to try to break that streak on the road in another Death Valley against the number 4 team in the country. That one, don't love that for the LSU Tigers.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game. I mean, this is one where it's tough to take your heart out of it and just kind of look at the numbers and see where you want to go as far as putting some money down and things of that nature. Game 1, our point's going to be at a premium, 57.5 is the over under. Is that high? Maybe. I think it's possible they could get up that high. Again, in game 1, I tend to think under as opposed to over. And then, of course, the money line is Clemson at minus 178, which aren't really great odds if you're picking the money line for the favorite. Usually that's set at like minus 105 or minus 110, but minus 178, it's not great for the money line for Clemson. And so, this is one I would honestly stay away from. Unless, you're a fan and you think one's going to win over the other. But the money isn't great, to be perfectly honest with you, with here. And I just don't know that that's a place where I would put my money.
Yeah, I'm with you. This would be one that I would throw into a parlay. I wouldn't straight bet Clemson's money line.
Yes,
I just don't think that the odds are worth it. But LSU has won 3 of the last 4 meetings. Last meeting was that 2019 national championship game. Completely different looking LSU team, to say the least. Vince, let's talk some player props, man. What's the first one you got?
Well, Cade Klubnik, he's getting all the press for Clemson. I think this is one that you kind of take a look at. His number is set at 260.5 yards through the air. The over hit in the final 3 games. Again, some pretty good competition. Number 15, South Carolina. Number 8, SMU. And number 5, Texas. All went over. And the over would have hit in 8 of the last 14 games in 2024. Last season, LSU gave up 378 yards to USC, 281 to UCLA, 284 to Ole Miss, and get this, 445 to Baylor in the bowl game. Now, they have a completely rebuilt secondary, so, of course, the Bayou Bengals are hoping that they do not give up those kind of numbers in game 1. But you're talking, like I said, a brand new group back there, maybe some communication issues, things of that nature. I think we hammer Cade Klubnik going over the 260 here.
Love that. No, I love that. Our second player prop that we have in here, we're switching it and talking about the other Tigers and the other Death Valley. But Caden Durham, the running back for LSU, I like his odds for an anytime touchdown. The odds right now are minus 130. Clemson's defense last year ranked number 52 in the country in rushing touchdowns allowed in 2024. If you guys remember, in some of their bigger games last season, they gave up 3 rushing touchdowns to Louisville to 3 different running backs, all 3 of who returned this season for the Cardinals. They also gave up 4 rushing touchdowns to Texas. It was even split between Jadon Blue and Quintravion Wisner. Clemson did get a new defensive coordinator in Tom Allen. He came over from Penn State. Question remains, though, Vince, is that defense going to be improved? You got a good defensive coordinator. You have really good pieces, especially in the front 7 on defense, but can you put that all together? I like Caden Durham's odds for a rushing touchdown on Saturday as well.
What are you staying away from in this game?
Look, man, LSU's receiving corps has been makeshift through the transfer portal. They have Aaron Anderson coming back. He's their slot guy from last year. He's their leading receiver. But right now on FanDuel, their odds are going towards Berrien Brown and CJ Daniels. Those are kind of the two main receivers that FanDuel is highlighting. I'm staying away from Berrien Brown's receiving yards. Right now it's set at 44.5, minus 114 odds. Brown only went over 44 receiving yards in 2 of the 12 games last season for Kentucky. That combined with the fact that I just don't know what the pecking order is going to be for LSU's receiving core this year. Garrett Nussmeier is going to throw it all over the yard this game, partially because that's his style of play. Also, I think that there might be some scenarios where he's going to have to, but I just don't trust that Berrien Brown's going to hit his over at 44.5 until proven otherwise.
I dig it. Let's move on to game number 4. Number 6, Notre Dame, flying down to Miami. Number 10, Miami Hurricanes. The big 3, Notre Dame favored by 2.5. The money line, Notre Dame at minus 134. And the over-under is set at 49.5. What stands out?
Look, man, this is an interesting matchup. It's a rivalry renewed for Notre Dame fans. You're all familiar with the 1988 Notre Dame-Miami game. But look, in terms of what's going to go down Sunday night, Miami ended 2024 on just kind of a rough note. They lost 3 of their last 4 games, and they were favored in all 4 matchups. They were favored by 13.5 points against Georgia Tech. They lost by 5. They were favored by 16 against Syracuse and lost by 4. And they were favored 6.5 against Iowa State. They lost by 1. But again, if Cam Ward plays in that Pop-Tarts Bowl, I'm pretty sure the Hurricanes walk away.
Yeah,
finishing the season 11-2 and not 10-3. Money line in this one, Notre Dame was 7-1 against ranked opponents in 2024 against the spread. Texas A&M, Louisville, Navy, Army, IU, Georgia, Penn State, and of course, the one loss to Ohio State. The thing that sticks out to me in this one is the over-under. Right now, it's set at 49.5. Now, if you've been watching Notre Dame football lately, like Vince and I have, the under is starting to look real enticing in this.
Yeah.
In the majority of Notre Dame's ranked matchups last year, and I'm taking out Army and Navy, yes, they were ranked matchups, different level of competition in there. Notre Dame didn't break the 30-point margin except for when they hosted number 15 Louisville at the time, the end of September. Scored 23 points against Texas A&M. They scored 27 points against Indiana, 23 points against Georgia, 27 against Penn State, and 23 against Ohio State. They have yet to cross that 30 threshold. I think Notre Dame wins this game. I'm not comfortable betting on the over here. So if there is one in this game that I would look for, and it's tough to say this as a Notre Dame fan, but I am going to take the under in this game. That's one that sticks out to me, especially with the weather.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think the weather is very much a part of that and could, tamp down the Notre Dame, passing game and what that looks like. And therefore also the Miami passing game and things could, they're still going to throw the football, but I think it'll be less of an aerial assault and as we might have thought if this was like an indoor game or the weather was good, et cetera. So for me, from these 3, I like Notre Dame to win this game. I like them to win by more than 3. So I'm taking Notre Dame minus the 2.5. I think that is a fairly safe bet. Not ready to say lock yet, but I do feel good about that one. How about a couple of player props, Trev, for this game? It looks like we've got 2 Notre Dame guys on the list.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're still Notre Dame guys, but these props are really juicy. I'll be honest. Jadarian Price, anytime touchdown. The odds right now are at plus 150.
Plus 150. Let's roll.
Hammering that. Listen, scored the first touchdown of the season in 2024 against Texas A&M. He finished the season with 7 rushing touchdowns in 2024. Notre Dame's going to be without Riley Leonard. And we're talking about a quarterback that ate up 184 rushing attempts, 906 rushing yards, and 17 rushing touchdowns last year. Jadarian Price anytime touchdown is one that I absolutely love. Absolutely love it.
You got a receiving one in here for the new Fighting Irish receiver coming over from Virginia, Malachi Fields.
Listen, his over-under right now is set at 39.5 at minus 114 odds. Fields went over 40 yards receiving in 20 of the last 24 games that he played in. 9 of 12 regular season games in 2024 and 11 of the 12 regular season games in 2023. Miami has a rebuilt secondary. Notre Dame brought in Malachi Fields to be their go-to guy on certain down and distance situations. They have a quarterback under center right now in CJ Carr, who has the ability to push the ball down the field vertically. I love Malachi Fields over 40 receiving yards in this one. Which one you staying away from, Vince?
Yeah, I'm staying away from the receiving props for Miami. this is, obviously a rebuilt Miami roster. It's going to be more by committee. And since this is kind of a similar situation that we were talking about with Ohio State and their rushing, same thing coming here. We don't know kind of what this is going to look like for Miami, right? With all the guys that they have, we don't know what the distribution is going to be. We don't know who the favorite targets are going to be, what the rotation is going to like. So many question marks there. Just stay away from the whole thing in week one. After a couple of weeks, you get a little bit of data. You see where guys are falling, what the pecking order is. Then you can start looking at the receiving props. But from a betting standpoint, I would just stay away from it. There's just too many question marks.
Agreed completely. And they're also going up against a really, really good secondary.
Also true.
I mean, like yes, we're Notre Dame fans. We got the flags and the plaque up behind us. But looking at it objectively, this is a very good secondary and one that I wouldn't feel comfortable betting on, even if we weren't a Notre Dame-based podcast, I guess you could say. Vince, let's talk some locks and drops. And again, we're talking about which is our locks of the week and bets to drop from the bet slip. And I'll get us kicked off here. My lock of the week, traveling up to Ann Arbor, Michigan. Boo. And I have New Mexico covering the spread at 34.5. I am extremely confident in this happening.
Big number.
Absolutely massive number. Why am I confident in this? Yes, I understand it's New Mexico, and yes, I understand it's Michigan, and they're 2 years removed from a national title. I don't care. Michigan scored over 30 points once in all of 2024. You're going to tell me that they're going to open up their season? Let's just say theoretically they shut them out. I don't know if Michigan's offense is scoring 35 points. They played two teams at a comparable level as New Mexico in 2024, and they beat Fresno State by 20 and Arkansas State by 10. Look, man, do I think New Mexico is going to win? I don't. But Michigan has a rebuilt offensive line. They lost star power on defense. Quarterback play is going to be better. They named true freshman Bryce Underwood the starter. I think that's marginal. Their quarterback play being better than last season. Look, Michigan went 4-0 in games where they passed for under 90 yards. But they weren't scoring over 30. It was by their defense. And so I'm not trusting it. New Mexico, they went 5-7 last season. They played Auburn on the road last season in week 2. Down in Auburn, they lost by 26. I love New Mexico to cover spread here.
Love that. Anytime we're doing anything against Michigan, I'm here for it. So I love that one. My lock of the week, Alabama minus the 13.5. And we kind of talked about it earlier. I just think Florida State and Alabama are in two completely different places to start off this season. Again, it is week 1. Florida State's trying to put a lot of pieces of the puzzle together to make this thing work. Trying to do that against Alabama is a whole other ball game, and I just don't think it's going to happen. And you can call this a gut feeling. You can call it whatever you want. I just think Alabama goes down. They score early and often, and I think they get it by way more than 13.5. So I'm hammering Alabama minus 13.5 here. That's my lock.
I love it. Absolutely love it. My drop of the week is Colorado passing props. Listen, this is the first time that we're going to see Deion Sanders as a head coach without his son as his starting quarterback. Shedeur is currently with the Cleveland Browns.
Any level.
At any level.
Yeah.
At any level. And right now it's currently up in the air who's going to be starting for the Buffaloes. Right now, FanDuel has Caden Salter slotted in as their starting quarterback. His over-under passing yards is 209.5 at minus 114 odds. Look, he's playing this really close to the chest. Still hasn't released a starter. I think it's a good bet that we see both of their quarterbacks in this game. Does not make me feel comfortable. I think it could be a situation similar to Notre Dame and Texas in 2016 when they were rotating Deshaun Kaiser and Malik Zaire. And I think they're just going to go with whoever the hot hand is. That could very well be Caden Salter. Definitely not one that I'm going to risk putting on any sort of parlay or putting on my bet slip because it could go one of either direction. So I'm staying away from Colorado passing props, Vince.
I'm in the same neighborhood as far as hitting some passing props here. Mine is specific, though. I'm staying away from CJ Carr's passing props for Notre Dame. It's set at 186.5. This is literally a number that they pulled out of the air. I mean, they have no idea what CJ Carr is going to do in his first start ever for Notre Dame. He hasn't even have a pass in college football. That's part of it, right? It's his first start.
Yep.
The weather is a big part of it as well. And then you throw into the fact that Notre Dame has the best running back room in the country. They're going to lean on that in the weather. They're going to ask CJ Carr to throw. Don't get me wrong. And if he goes over the 186.5, that's fine. And I wouldn't be overly surprised by that. But there's just way too much question about it that I'm not touching it. I'm dropping it. I'm not having anything to do with CJ Carr's passing props. There's no faith that the weather is going to allow him to do what he does best. And like I said, best running back in the room, they're going to lean on it. So I'm staying away from CJ Carr's passing props.
Well, I don't blame you at all, man. I mean, that's why we're not touching it, because I'm also not confident in taking the under.
Right,
I could very well see him go out and pass for 200 yards. I could go out and see him pass for 187. And if he does that, like we learned, unfortunately, in the Stanford game at plus 2.5, all it takes is that little half of a point, man. That's all it takes. Vince, let's wrap up today's show. Let's tie a bow on it and talk about our dogs of the week. My dog of the week is a Syracuse Orange playing a neutral site game.
You love you some Angeli. I know you do. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah, you guilty. You got me, man. You got me. I was trying to hold it. I have to delete that note here in our outline here. No, look. Right now, the current spread is at 13.5. The odds are at minus 105 for Syracuse to cover. Tennessee lost a lot of their production offensively and defensively from last season. They don't have Dylan Sampson. We obviously know the entire situation with Nico. They're having another issue with a defensive back. They lost Damian Pierce, one of their great edge rushers. The Volunteer starting quarterback this year is Joey Aguilar. He's coming up from the G5 level through 14 interceptions at the G5 level. I always get really nervous about quarterbacks going from playing at a school like Appalachian State to starting in the SEC. Now, Syracuse also had a lot of moving pieces here, but I do think that they're going to be helped out by the fact that this game isn't being played in Neyland Stadium. It's not in Knoxville. It's a neutral. So I believe they're down in Atlanta, I think. But Angeli was named the starting quarterback for Syracuse. I don't know if they win. I think they cover. I think it'll be a closer game than what some are chalking it up to be. And like I said, it helps to be on a neutral site and not playing down in Knoxville.
No doubt about it. My dog of the week, I was hunting for a big number, and guess what? I found it. Nevada is going into Penn State. It's a 43.5 point spread. 43.5. That's just a massive, massive number. Look, Nevada is not a great football team. Don't get me wrong, okay? And they got to go across the country to Penn State to play in this game. Got it. But they score enough. They scored about 20 points a game last year. They gave up about 28. All their games are close. Whether they were winning them or losing them, all their games were close, okay? So to think that they're going to go over to Happy Valley and lose by 43, look, I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm saying I think they get inside the 43.5. Keep an eye out for running back Herschel Turner Jr. He's a transfer from Utah State, had over 3,000 yards on the ground and over 40 touchdowns his senior year of high school. He is now a true sophomore, getting his opportunity to be the starter at Nevada. He's a little guy. He's 5'9", so he's a little bit of a scat back. I think he's gonna have himself a little bit of a game here. So keep your eyes on him. I just like Nevada to get inside the 43.5. They're my dog of the week. I think Penn State, to their credit, I will give them credit here. I think they call off the dogs before it gets to 44. So I like Nevada to get inside the 43.5.
Love it. I love it. Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it here for us tonight on the spread option here on the CFB Nation podcast. Week 1 is already off to a hot start. USF is blowing the doors off of Boise State right now. It's 31-7, 7 minutes left to go. And Boise State's having to go for it on 4th down to make this respectable. Bowling Green, I don't know if you saw, Vince, in back-to-back seasons now, they've began their season with kick returns for touchdowns.
Nice. Special teams, baby.
That is electric. That's Maction for you. Well, listen, folks, going to be some awesome games this weekend. On your way out of here, be sure you hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live on here. We will be back again next Thursday at 8 p.m., hopefully in a good mood because Notre Dame walked away with a win, and we're going to be stress-free because they don't have to play next Saturday. And so Vince and I will be back here next week at 8 p.m. But until then, it's Vince, Trevor. See you back here very soon on the CFB Nation podcast.